I'm going to call the city council work session to order with a roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon,
Here.
Councillor Weber,
Here.
Councillor Mo,
Here.
Councillor Rodley,
Here.
Councillor Doyle,
Here.
Councillor Pictionary.
Here, thank you. We have two items tonight. The first item is bike share with Drew Larson.
It seems really low. Good evening. My name is Drew Larson. I'm a transportation planner for the city of Springfield. And with me this evening is Kelsey Moore from the Lane Council of Government. She is our transportation options specialist. And this evening we are presenting again on the bike share pilot program or bike share expansion into the city of Springfield. Also with me this evening is Cascadia Mobility. They are the operators of the existing Peace Health bike rides or bike share in the city of Eugene. I've got Brody Hilton and Al Hongo from Cascadia Mobility. Oh, one too many. There we go. So just a quick little background for the new councilor members. We were here in March of 2022, and there was a general support of bike share in Springfield, but there was some questions related specifically to what was the community feedback, what were the expansion details, the evaluation criteria and process, operation plan, and timelines and funding details. And so after that meeting, Kelsey Moore did a number of community outreach, and I'm actually going to turn it over to her for just a little bit, and then I will be back shortly.
Good evening. So for those of you who weren't here when we presented in March of 2022, a couple of bike share basics. Users can walk up to a bike share hub, which is a rental return location, rent a bike, take it for a short trip anywhere within the system boundaries and return it and leave it behind. Generally, bike share works best if it's situated densely and the hubs are situated close to each other. I'm back. So Peace Health Rides launched in Eugene in April of 2018. Currently, it has 300 bikes and 40 hubs, those rental return locations. The hubs are located near retail, transit, and housing. It boasts a diverse ridership. You'll see visitors, residents, and students using the current system in Eugene. And over the past 12 months, 150,000 trips were taken by bike share. So in fall of 2022, we launched a community engagement process here in Springfield. One of the questions council asked when we presented in the past was, do Springfield residents want to see bike share here? And if so, where do they want to see bike share operating? So we launched a process. We had an interactive feedback tool, a web page, print materials, digital materials, and we also conducted in-person surveys at 4 key locations. You can see some of the materials up there as well. Here you'll see an example of the online feedback tool where residents could visit and give their information about where they would be interested in seeing bike share and the in-person survey. In the in-person survey, we learned that 76% of residents were familiar with bike share and 86% of respondees to the in-person survey said they were interested in seeing bike share operate in Springfield. The operation zones, it's kind of hard to read here. So respondees to the in-person survey and the online feedback tool said that they'd like to see bike share operate in downtown was the #1. Mohawk, Gateway Riverbend, Centennial, and Glenwood were close follow-ups to downtown. For when asked where they'd like to see hub locations, the rental return locations, some of the key places identified on the online feedback tool was Willamette Lane Park Swim Center, the downtown LTD station, Planktown, Public House, and Doris Ranch. We also wanted to make sure that we heard directly from business owners, property owners, and developers, as specifically in the downtown core, as we anticipated that would be likely where bike share would operate. We So I visited all the downtown businesses on Main Street, answering questions, making sure they understood the project scope. 13 downtown businesses chose to sign a letter of support, and 3 key property owners and developers also chose to sign letters of support for a bike share pilot in Springfield. We also interacted with Willamette throughout the process, as we knew some of the rental return hub locations could potentially be located near the path system or in parks. And Willamette was eager to see the system operate in Springfield and also chose to sign a letter of support. And I'm going to turn it back over to Drew to talk a little bit more about what the pilot proposal looks like for Springfield. Thank you.
Okay, so based on Kelsey's outreach and direction actually from City Council back in the March of 2022, stating that they would think that bike share expansion in the downtown Springfield, the core area, would probably be most suited for it. That's actually where Kelsey focused much of her public engagement and outreach. And just on this map, I believe we placed one in front of you. It's just a heat map compiling all the information from the online data survey, the in-person surveys. And so you can see on that, based on that heat map, that the downtown core area was the key areas in which the city of Springfield residents would like to see it operate. So again, from that March 2022 work session, council wanted to know a little bit more about the operations of the bike share system in Springfield. And so with that, staff, along with Cascadia Mobility, evaluated the existing Eugene contract and operations and maintenance responsibilities and identified some key components in which we view that should be key components of the contract. And that includes ownership, maintenance responsibilities, and installation of them. As you can see here, the city of Springfield would actually be the owners of the hub infrastructure, the racks, signage, those types of things. Cascadia Mobility would own the bicycles. And then following launch, all maintenance, including graffiti removal, relocation, or in the eventuality of ultimate removal of the bike share hub infrastructure, that would all fall on either Cascadia Mobility or a private contractor to be funded through the grant. So the timeline, it is funding determinant. So once we have funding, that'll kind of set that clock of when actually launch would occur. So we don't have a solid date on that. That's one of the items we are requesting this evening. And so staff is proposing a 3-year pilot program. The 3 years staff feels is a good measure of success for a program. It gets residents 6 months to a year to get comfortable with the new system and comfortable with the new transit option that they have available to them. It also aligns with regional grant funding cycles, which are about a 3 to 4 year application and funding cycle. So staff is recommending that 3-year pilot program. And again, from that March 2022 work session, council was concerned with evaluation criteria as well as maybe even an off-ramp. So staff is recommending an 18-month evaluation in which council can decide whether or not to off-ramp the project or terminate the project or direct staff to seek additional funding for an ongoing bike share program in the city of Springfield. So the Eugene system is currently funded by 3 different sources. That is sponsorship for the Peace Health rides. They're the primary sponsorship. There's rider revenue, and then there's transportation grant funding, all of which staff would pursue if council directs us to pursue bicycle funding. There is a unique opportunity this year through ODOT, the Oregon Department of Transportation's Innovative Mobility Grant, which specifically identifies bike share as an eligible project. And that application process opens up probably fall of this year. And so that would be a unique opportunity to proceed with funding. This one gets a little technical, so I am just going to read what I wrote just so I don't muddle through it. So please bear with me. So based on secured funding and projected sponsorship and rider revenue, staff is seeking direction from council this evening to secure approximately $410,000 in grants to cover launch and operational costs for the proposed 3-year pilot program, including $338,000 to cover the 3-year operations of bike share and $72,000 to cover any remaining costs to refurbish the bicycles and the hub infrastructure. So with that comes local match requirements, pretty much with any grant. And transportation funding local match ranges from 10 to 20%, or in this case, $42,000 to $82,000 in local match requirements. So with that, staff is recommending action this evening to direct staff to request Peace Health sponsorship. Pursue the $410,000 in grants, and then update council when the funds are secured. Finalize hub locations and service area, bring an operations contract to city council for approval, and update city council after 18 months of operation. Thank you, and we are available if you have any questions.
Steve.
I was at a MPO meeting last Thursday, and I believe we okayed $600,000 for bike share operations to Eugene. Do these programs mix?
So I will probably lean on Brody here in a second. So the systems, we're proposing that the system be operated by the same operator, Cascadia Mobility.
Okay.
That $600,000 for Eugene is for an expansion in Eugene and would not cover a pilot program in the city of Springfield.
It still goes through Peace Health though, doesn't it?
Well, Peace Health is the primary sponsorship of the bike share system. Yes.
Thank you.
I'll just answer that quickly. I'm Brody Hilton with Cascadia Mobility. Yes, the answer to your question is yes. We would expand the network so that the bicycles would flow freely between Springfield and Eugene. It would be operated as a single network.
Thank you.
Joe.
So I have a question in regards to, so there's money made through an app that people pay, correct?
Correct. There is rider revenue.
Okay. And so to refurbish a bike is $1,000 each. And then you have people that are collecting money, but it sounds like we have an expense of 400,000. Not we, I'm just saying the total cost of the program looks like 410,000.
Correct. That 410,000. So we have secured funding, $100,000 for bike refurbishment. That wouldn't potentially cover the entire refurbishment. And we also received a regional bicycle enhancements grant that was covering a good chunk of the bicycle infrastructure that we need, hub locations, those types of things. So that 410,000 is $338,000 in operational costs. That's just to operate the system for 3 years. And then about 72,000 to cover the shortfalls in the launch that we don't already have secured.
So it's about 120,000 a year operationally.
Yeah, 110, 120,000 operational. Yeah.
And so the profit from the people paying on the app, where does that go?
So that goes into the operate. So actual operation of it is more along the lines of $865,000. And so with sponsorship from Peace Health Rides, rider revenue, you're looking at income or subsidies, I don't know, however you want to look at, of $527,000. And so that 410,000 would cover the shortfall on operations and again, the remaining portion of the launch.
So the total actual cost of the program is, you're saying, is about 800 and something thousand. Is that right?
865,000 to operate, to run it operationally.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the price tab is. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So total price tag with launch hub infrastructure, we're looking at just over $1 million.
For 100 bikes.
For 100 bikes, hub infrastructure, maintenance responsibilities, operation, all of
For
it.
me, my math says that's $100,000 a bike. Right? For the total cost program. for 100
Million
bikes,
divided by 100,
100 and some odd thousand per bike over the life of that program. Someone help me with my math. That could be way off.
$10,000 a bike over the
10,000.
life of the program. And yes, we have received bicycles, and the refurbishment is about $1,000 a piece. All in, technology included, paint, all that. So yeah, the total need for the program would be on the order of $400,000 for the 3-year pilot. The revenues earned we would be approaching Peace Health to sponsor the program.
No, my math was wrong. It just didn't click. So yes, about $11,000 per bike for the 3-year period.
And that also, though, includes the rack infrastructure, which is a sort of a separate bucket, if you will. When we talk about infrastructure to support the program, we're talking about standard bicycle racks, which anybody riding a bicycle can lock to. So even if the bike share program, for example, didn't succeed, the racking, to my understanding, would remain, or it could be removed. But in any case, the bicycle racks are available for any bicyclist.
Those are bought, but those are owned by the city.
Correct.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay,
I would-
so go ahead.
I was just going to say, if for those of you who are interested in the budget, it's attachment 4. So that has all the budget details.
So I think one of the things I'm unclear about the budget for is the 400K. Is that including Peace Health or excluding Peace Health?
So if you look at attachment 4, it breaks it into a launch budget and then the 3-year operation budget for the pilot. And the launch budget is for bikes to refurbish those, the hub infrastructure that we were talking about, having a sign and some racks to lock a bike to. Administrative costs. And then we built in a 15% contingency as things sometimes, cost will go up over time. And that you can see some of the columns there also show the funding that has already been secured for the bike refurbishment and for some of the hub infrastructure as well.
Victoria?
So just real quickly, I just
Mhm.
want to say I'm familiar with the Eugene project. I remember when it went in, and I actually have used those bikes
Mhm.
in Eugene and working downtown, and I found them to be really convenient and useful. I've used them in Bend when I've been there doing the Ale Trail, and I didn't want to, be on a car.
Mhm.
I don't see the same need in Springfield. I just don't see Springfield being like in Eugene, things are spread out. So I'm downtown and I want to go up to 18th and Willamette, or I want to go over to Whole Foods or whatever. The stuff is in enough of an area where I can get there, but it's not that big of a deal. And in Springfield, I just don't see us having the infrastructure that would necessitate a program like this. I'm still trying to wrap my head around
Mhm.
why we would use that. Because I'm not going to use it to go to work, obviously. If I work in Eugene or Eugene to Springfield. So I'm trying to figure out how people and why people would use those bikes in our town.
That's a really good question. Talking to downtown business owners, I received a lot of feedback that most of the owners I was able to get in person, they're small business owners. So you're going in and sometimes you're not always able to talk directly to the owner. But when I was, most of the owners were supportive and they could see a lot of value, and especially bringing potentially U of O students into downtown Springfield was one thing that I heard is like a value of it. And then within Springfield, I heard some of them say they could see like employees riding from their neighborhood into downtown Springfield, people coming down to access dining, retail. It is a little unique in Springfield in the sense that are you referring to there's fewer hubs where you might be purchasing?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I'm in my
Mhm.
neighborhood in Thurston, or even if I'm in, I don't know, over by Q Street and what have you, I just don't see someone, we're more compact.
Mhm.
And so I see people taking an Uber for $5, right? Instead of hopping on this, bike, having to do, because it is a bit of a thing to learn to get used to the coding and
It's
stuff.
gotten easier now.
Oh, it has
Now
it?
you
Okay.
scan it. There's a QR
Okay.
code on the back.
Because it
I
used to
know what
be
you're
like,
talking
you had to
about.
know your code, and I
Yeah.
still have it in my phone, like what my code is.
It's
and stuff,
much
so-
quicker. You walk up to a bike, you can use a code, but you can also scan it with your smartphone if you have one to rent a bike that way. And I think in Springfield, we're being conscious of where the comfortable bike infrastructure is currently when we're looking at siting hubs as well. In the sense that I hear you saying, would people ride it? One thing is where would they ride it to? How would they use it? We did hear from residents in the online and in the in-person surveys that they were interested in using it. So there is some interest. And then when it comes to like where, I think definitely thinking about where it would be comfortable and where those nodes of places that people would want to get to are.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
I've just seen some of these programs like the umbrella program we did in Cottage Grove where we had free umbrellas, like people could just borrow the umbrellas and then drop them at other places and stuff. And it just didn't work in that small of a community. So I'm just.
And I'm not sure if I answered the budget question sufficiently. Sometimes when I'm a little nervous, I have trouble speaking in numbers. So I'm happy to turn it over to a colleague to answer it if that's still outstanding.
We'll come back to that
Okay.
in a second. We got people starting to queue up, Steve, and then we'll
Great.
go to Michelle.
I completely agree with Victoria, but the future is going to drive us towards more bicycles and less cars. And getting this system, getting used to it in the future, that's going to be something we're going to have to do.
Michelle.
The surveys that were performed, do we feel like that's a really good representation of all of Springfield, or was that isolated to like a specific area? Do we think this is something that like the majority of Springfield residents would support, or?
Very good question. I anticipated that. So to the site, we had 1,121 visits. That doesn't represent everyone who interacted with the online tool, but we did get 260 votes on 67 hub sites. People could say, I like that hub location or propose a new one. And 167 votes on 19 of the operational zone. So we did hear from people on the online tool. And when we sent out the postcards, we sent out 7,430 postcards. We did focus kind of on a downtown adjacent area, but we also sent them to establishments that had a liquor license with the assumption that those could potentially be dining and retail locations. And we wanted to hear, not retail, but dining and restaurant locations. And we wanted to hear from those locations. And we also sent out to affordable housing. We promoted really heavily through our partners and all of our online resource options. We had flyers and posters around the community. So I think we had for the size of the project, the outreach was very robust. I know that people are busy and not everyone will choose to give feedback, but I would say it was pretty robust feedback for the size of the project. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you.
Jill.
Come on back up.
Hello.
So on that survey, and I looked on the on-site survey, and
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing a question that said, would you support this program if it cost tax dollars?
There was not that question on the online survey. You're correct.
Seems like they
And-
should know it would cost them money. If they wanted it.
Mhm.
And the question of would you be interested if it cost tax dollar monies?
Are you referring to the grant match funds that would be required for any grant?
I'm referring to the survey where, grants are tax dollars, no matter what it's
I
called,
see.
right? So are the people just point blank asked, are you interested in this program if it's going to cost tax dollars as opposed to being self-funded?
They weren't, but I would posit that most people understand that programs do cost money and that oftentimes when we're proposing a public transportation option, that they can assume that there will be some cost associated with that. So
There's
we
an
never
assumption.
once said, it is an assumption, but we never once said there will be no cost associated. And you're correct. That was not one of the questions.
It would probably influence my answer if you were to ask.
Corey.
Thank you.
I hear that. Thank you.
I just want to say that I appreciate all of the intentional outreach because I remember the last time and I was one of those people who was like, I want a definition of where the bikes would go and who would use them. And I appreciate that you all went out to answer that question. And I'm still supportive of this.
Thank you.
Victoria.
Just one real quick question. So in the hubs, are these going to be on private property? Or are you planning on using public right of way?
So right now, we would wait for council approval to pursue the pilot project. We have some identified hub locations based on the public input, but we would go out with staff and look at those sites and see if they're feasible. Likely, most of them would be on public right of way, but there is the opportunity for private if a business or another entity was interested in seeing a hub sited on private property.
So when I look at the map and I look at the packet, so are you recommending that it be expanded to every place the heat map is? Are you recommending simply that it expand into downtown?
When you look at the heat map, there's a system boundary. I'm not sure if that's super clear.
Oh,
I wish
yep.
I could click back. But
Okay.
you'll see the heat map shows you the areas that the public said, hey, we'd be interested in seeing those rental return hub locations here. And then we proposed a system boundary within that. Part of the reason we're proposing a system boundary is bike share systems work best when the hubs are situated very near to each other, within 1/4 a mile or less. And that's just what data has showed us over time for the Eugene system and systems across the states. And that's why we're looking at that initial system boundary, because we anticipate that about 100 bikes within that would be reasonable and users would always have access to a bike.
Okay. I do have to me, the system boundaries make a little bit more sense. I've got a question about, I got to think about whether or not it would be too big. But it's very clearly not, centered on our downtown core. What would happen if you took it out of the system boundary into the say Glenwood area?
Oh, yeah. So we
You
are
get an
looking at,
alarm, right?
so there's actually an interesting piece to it where you can geofence areas. So we are looking at the potential to geofence an area. So we could have a system boundary and say, but there's actually, I think we didn't mention this, but there are 2 hub locations at the Peace Health Riverbend location currently.
Okay.
And so that's kind of a satellite option. There's the option to geofence other locations such as Doris Ranch, the shops at Gateway, key locations maybe near some of the hotels in Glenwood. So there could be geofence locations that are kind of satellite to that system boundary. You can ride in and out of the system. You are charged if you park a bike and you end your trip outside of the system. So users are encouraged to ride back in the system. And I think something that was touched on earlier is this is a system of 100 bikes. That's what we're proposing for Springfield as a pilot. However, it would be able to be used regionally. So a user could ride between the Eugene system boundaries and the Springfield and leave rent and return bikes within both. So they'll be at 300 bikes in that system, 100 in the Springfield one, but they'll go back and forth and be rebalanced. Yeah, please do.
Hi, my name's Al, I'm the Director of Operations. So, I'm the guy who actually makes sure the bikes are in the right places at the right times, or I manage the team who does. And one thing that I think is really important to add to this question about a system area boundary is that we don't discourage people to leave the boundary so long as the bike winds up back inside at the end of the day. Just in the month of October last year, there were actually about 57 trips that came through Springfield, which is a pretty long trek from Eugene, given that our boundary ends basically near Autzen Stadium. So there's already demand to make trips from Eugene to Springfield. That's 57 trips in just 1 month. And so Springfield would actually be getting a particularly strong value for money in that, in a way, it can lean on what will actually be about 350 bikes very soon in Eugene. And then that people from Eugene can come to Springfield, people from Springfield can go to Eugene, and vice versa. They can swap between regions. And of course, my team will ensure that by the end of the day, every day, that there's still at least 100 bikes in Springfield that are working and ready for people to.
Okay, could we go back to the budget question? I'm still unclear where this Peace Health sponsorship comes into it. So when we're looking at the overall bottom line. So are you
already handled this one.
Yeah, why don't I
Okay.
try? So the total 3-year operating cost estimate is $865,290.
okay?
We're anticipating somewhere on the order of $100,000. Our ask of Peace Health will be on the order of $100,000 per year, which is on par with the per bike, about $1,000 per bike per year
Okay.
that they pay to sponsor the system in Eugene. And you see that reflected there on the bottom middle column there, 315,000 over the 3-year period. And we project rider revenues on the order of $212,000 over the 3-year period. And I call that a conservative estimate in both cases, frankly. We may be able to ask Peace Health for a little bit more as the inflation has impacted everyone over the last 2 years. And likewise, we changed our pricing to make single trips a little bit more expensive for folks using the bike share system. Single trips, you pay in 2 ways. Either you are a monthly member and basically all your trips are free for $15 a month, or you pay per trip. And so the visitors pay per trip, and that is primarily where we change the price. We charge $1 to unlock if you're a visitor or a single trip user. And so our rider revenues over the last 6 months of 2022 exceeded our revenue projections. So that's just to say the revenue projections here I'd call slightly conservative. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Joe?
So you determine the prices, you're just saying it's $1 to unlock, and then you have a monthly fee. And the cost to Springfield is projected to be between 42,000 and 82,000 over, is that over the 3-year period?
Yes, that would be the match. Mhm.
And so when you're coming up with pricing, have you explored having a net zero cost for the city?
What we're trying to do is make bike share accessible. Frankly, is we view this, we're a nonprofit and we're running this as an extension of transit, as a mode of transit, as a way for people to connect to traditional forms of transit. So to connect to the bus, and that's part of the strategy with the siting, is to site hubs near transit and in employment centers and recreation centers and places where people want to shop, right? That's the point of it. We could certainly raise our pricing further, but that will have an impact on the ridership. When we take a look at what is the public cost per trip compared to other modes, even driving your own car or riding the bus, there's nothing cheaper except for riding the bike you own. And this is a way to connect people to a bike that they don't own in case they are worried about bike theft, in case they find themselves downtown Springfield without their car. It allows people to get to work without a car and take a car on a short trip for a lunch meeting, to run an errand, whatever it may be. So this is really just, again, an extension of transit. We think of bike share as a mode of transit, frankly. And Tom Schwetz from LTD is here in support of us and the work we're doing.
The question was
No, but I'm saying,
kind of going off on a.
no, I'm not trying to go on a tangent. I'm just saying, I think we have a broad spectrum of community support around the project. And frankly, our hope is that we're moving towards, as Councilor Mo mentioned, I mean, towards more bicycle accessibility. And what this can help do is achieve goals around that, right? By what I've launched bike share programs around the country. And one thing we see when we launch programs is that bike share begets bicycle infrastructure, and more bicycling begets more bicyclists. And so all ships rise and traffic is reduced and emissions go down and communities are more tightly knit. Those are the things that I observe.
Any other comments? Because we're going to have to get to the point where we give them some direction. We can give them a yes, go ahead, bring back more information. You guys want to talk about it longer, any number of things.
Bring it back.
Do you want to talk about it longer, Steve? Are you good going forward?
I'm good going forward, but keep the information coming to us. Please.
Joe?
Something we're going to have to do eventually anyways.
Oh, we only have to do what we say we have to do, right?
No, but like I said, it's going to be the future.
Well, as proposed, I can't support this right now. I think based on shooting 3 years out and also a cost to the public. For me, I would like to be able to see it as saying, okay, let's come back as a net zero cost.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's just not going to happen. It will never be a net zero.
Hang on a second.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't
Let-
ask you a question.
Let him finish and then we'll.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So that's really for me is where you got programs, even state programs out there that are saying that they have to be self-funded and they're not getting any legislative money, and they charge the users enough to pay for their programs. And I don't see this as any different. I see this as a cost to the city. So I can't support it as it's set. If it come back with a net zero cost or it's self-funded, I'm all ears.
Anybody else want to get in here?
I agree with Joe as far as the taxpayers are concerned. I don't want to pass anything on to them. But again, we still have to look ahead. I'd like to see it self-funded somehow.
One, go ahead, Victoria.
And I don't necessarily agree. The way of the future means maybe people own their own bikes and stuff, but the fact that the city has to provide that for these short trips. I mean, we've moved into where we have Uber and Lyft that will take you to these short rides for $5, for $3, and they're people's own money and they get to make that choice. So I personally think it's a cool idea. I just don't think it's right for Springfield. So I'm not unfortunately able to support it myself either.
So you,
I mean, I would like to see a little less burden on the tax dollar side of it too. So if there's some way we can maybe work with different local partners. I know Tom is here in support of this, and LTD is working really hard to solve this problem too. So maybe we can have a bigger conversation with LTD
Or
on
Willamette Lane.
potential solutions with Willamette Lane. I mean, we have a lot of partners I know
Yeah.
that want to get involved and support and solve for this. So I think we have an opportunity here that we maybe just need to pursue a little bit further.
sorry, are you finished?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we bring it back? There's a couple other places that I do have questions about. What are the other things that, when I look at the service boundary, right? Like my question also revolves around, could we shape and size it as far as the total bike size, right? Because I don't know if that, impacts the total cost. The other question would be other sponsorships from either LTD, or Willamette Lane if they're interested, or if I look at the slide, it says that, to go out for grants, what those grants might look like. I know there's a ton of state funds out there right now. So I think that's a question to kind of look at it. The other thing that I would love to know operationally is the size of the, I guess the identified, where these hubs are going to go, right? Because it talks about there could be as many as like 10 of them. And I'm just trying to get my head around the size and, well, okay, 16 of them, right? Like if we focus on specifically downtown, right? Like how big of a footprint are we actually talking about to fit those 100 bikes? And then lastly, maybe a cleaner look at what the financials are instead of having it as the total cost, turn it into an annual, sort of an annual run rate from there. I think there's just a little bit of additional work that can be done here. Generally, I'm supportive of bringing this into downtown. I think it makes sense to come through Glenwood and downtown, especially when it connects to Peace Health. I do have questions about whether or not an extension at Gateway would make sense. But I just don't have enough information. Are people good with that? Let them kind of work on it a little bit more. Let's come back and talk about it. And then we can figure it out from there.
Yeah, the outside money interests me because this $600,000 we got for the city of Eugene came from federal money, I believe. And so they got it, and we didn't.
Well,
We don't.
Yeah, no. So
and I think that actually could help with this conversation a lot, because when you look at the content, it says, hey, look, go out and find money. That's different than, hey, we would go apply to these sort of 5 grants. So anybody else before we switch to Mary Bridget? Because we're running a little bit of time. All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Are you ready? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Mary Bridget Smith, your city attorney. I'm here tonight to continue the conversation on revising the city's camping ordinance. I am mindful of time, and this was meant to be a short item and just really provide some information to the council, some additional information, and you will have additional opportunities to discuss this matter. What we wanted to bring before the council tonight were about two items related to this would be sheltering options in Springfield now, and then some examples from other jurisdictions. And I think what I'll do in the interest of time is flip this and talk about other examples from other jurisdictions so we can kind of get that part of the conversation rolling. So really the point in trying to talk about what other jurisdictions are doing is just a starting point. Sometimes it can be a nice jumping off point when you're trying to figure out how to regulate in your own community to say, okay, what did other people do? How would that work here? What are the limitations? Maybe that won't work or it would. So not trying to take a template from anybody, but just sort of looking at what other jurisdictions have done. I would encourage you to think of the categories though of the when, where, and how, or time, place, and manner, because that's sort of the buckets that these regulations are falling into, and it's what the cases talk about. And also, I believe House Bill 3115. So be thinking as you're kind of working through this, and we'll probably be framing this conversation up to, you know, where is it permitted or prohibited? When and how, I mean the manner in terms of how people would be camping on city property. I also want to be clear that this is the scope here is what we're talking about is narrow. It is publicly owned property that is open to the public. And the overall thought behind this are the court rulings that talk about how local governments cannot criminalize conduct that is unavoidable consequence of being homeless, sitting, lying, or sleeping, but can and now must, because of the statute generally, regulate those items. So that's really, as we frame up this conversation, what we're talking about. I know homelessness and unhoused is this huge issue, has lots of subparts, but that's really the conversation tonight. Looking at other jurisdictions, some themes are kind of, I think, emerging in terms of what other organizations are doing. Looking first at time, we're seeing obviously evening, that idea with sleeping, that people generally sleep during the day. That may not necessarily be always true for the unhoused community, but that is what you're seeing in the regulation that, sleeping may be allowed during the evening time, but not during the day in public areas. 24 hours is another thing that has come up, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that so you have some perspective. So these, there's another group of statutes that talks about homeless camp cleanups, and that talks about cleaning up an established camp. And that would be somewhere where people have been sleeping and being for a longer period of time. Under state law, there are notifications and property storage requirements for homeless camp cleanup, and they talk about established camps, but the statute and the courts have not yet defined what established means. And so the conventional wisdom is 24 hours, less than 24 hours or less, keeps you from having an established area. So a lot of these regulations would say that you can camp for 24 hours or less, or you need to move, down the block or down the way to try and avoid that establishment of a camp. So that's what you would see there. So that's the connection to camp cleanup. Where locations of where it's prohibited or allowed, very similar to the conversation that I think the council had in January. Environmentally sensitive areas, residentially zoned areas, safety areas for right of way. People are quite vulnerable when they're camping that way, trying to think about keeping people safe. And then also limitations. Medford has limitations about time of year and fire safety because of a particular area that they're in. And then also prohibiting camping around an area that may provide services to folks experiencing homelessness, with that idea that, you want that service to be able to be there, and it may not be compatible to have people camping right next to if you have a shelter or some kind of area there. So those are some of the areas in terms of where, and then certain cities will even have particular right of way or streets. Well, they would just outright say no. They also may say, hey, we may determine later that this is not a good place to camp because of traffic or construction or something, and they have the ability to change that. You'll see some organizations will also kind of have an ability for the city manager to set regulations or provide permits in particular instances. And that may be some flexibility that you want to have down the road in terms of, if there's a big construction project somewhere and that was an area where people were, you may not want that to, those wouldn't be necessarily compatible. Another thing on location could be schools, daycares, those kinds of other uses. Parks has, again, we have a parks district in our community that regulate parks. Parks in some communities was allowed, others it wasn't. It might depend on the type of park, where that park was in terms of in the location of the city or the types of services that that park provided. Some of them were like, for example, you couldn't be so close or far from a particular path or trail, as an example. And then the how, I think you'll really see fires, people building fires as being problematic for safety, structures, a lot of personal property, animals, trash, those kinds of things. Bend had a recommendation, or I'm sorry, their code talks about moving a space after 24 hours. That's to break up that camp establishment and have that small area. So those are some of the things we're seeing. We're going to keep looking as our other organizations work through this. But as we come into March, I just kind of wanted you to be able to have in your head, oh yeah, okay, some places are talking about time or they're talking about places. And if there are things that would help you or other communities that you know about, I'm more than happy to look at those as well.
Jill. I thought you raised your hand. All right, Corey.
Thank you for this. As you
Like
know,
this?
we've been on this since the
Yes.
beginning. I have one. I appreciate thinking about flexibility as our neighborhoods and things evolve over time, and exactly what you said, if we're having an area where we're doing a lot of road construction or there's a develop. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
I also appreciate the thinking about how can we set the policy at this level, and is there a way to empower the city manager and staff to make those day-to-day decisions? I really like that.
Okay.
And I have a question: if any of these have put any sort of congregate number limitations, like, to in addition to the time, like 24 hours and then you move, maybe no more than, 1 or 2 camps or something like that. Has anybody, is that a thing we could do too?
I think so. I have seen, and I believe it's Corvallis did have like, instead of congregate numbers, it was certain distance from other people and other campers. So I think that's another way to get at that issue. But I can look and see.
Are you sure this time? All right.
Pretty sure. Thank you, Mary Bridget. I appreciate the amount of work you put in there. And I, for one, have always appreciated looking at other agencies or entities very much so, because what I see here is a, what do they call that when a painter's got this thing, all the different colors of paint, a palette?
Mhm.
That's what I see right here.
Mhm.
There's no clear color. But what is clear to me is everybody's trying.
Yes.
And I think this also gives us an opportunity to pick pieces of each one of these that best suits Springfield. So I really
Okay.
appreciate this approach. And I think we're going definitely in the right direction.
Okay.
I do understand and I support having a no more than 24-hour limit, because I do not want to get into landlord tenant issues,
Okay.
storage of property, et cetera. And I didn't see, unless I missed it, which is very possible, I didn't see where they had, I know they had some pieces here, I think in Newport, where it's talking about schools and other facilities, but I didn't see should not be camped near any areas or ROWs that may pose a danger to the campers.
Yeah, I would see
mean,
some
like
places
on-ramps.
would say, for example, there's some that will just say, look, no camping on these on right of ways, or they might call it specific right of ways. And what I wasn't just able to determine from my research was like, oh, is that somewhere because it's a super busy road and they don't want people there? Or is that somewhere because,
Entrance to
of
the-
some other
even entrance to
reason?
the city, or,
Yeah, and then I think one community I saw had like no obstructions, and that's
Right.
another issue. And
Right.
Portland is dealing with that now.
right?
Obstructing exits, like you said, on ramps, other areas where people would be, where drivers and, folks would not be compatible.
Right. And a big concern for me also is the vicinity of waterways.
Yes,
So I think because got 2 rivers on our borders, that,
Yes.
and we've had those problems before with camps that are in the vicinity of right of ways. Well,
Okay.
there's drinking water pulled from some of those rivers areas and at least wellheads that are in those areas. And contamination, I think, can be easily made if we don't
Yeah.
limit that. So
Okay.
the ROWs, they have the potential safety hazards such as on-ramp, off-ramp areas,
Mhm.
vicinity or locales next to waterways. And it could even be, for example, there's public land that's from Main Street north to Thurston Road on 69th. There's a waterway there, that's part of our flood control system
Mm.
that does have property on either side of that right of way that may be enough for a camp, but it would not be safe for them
Okay.
because it's actually about a 12 or 14-foot drop
North of Thurston Road, you said?
between Thurston and Main Street on 69th, running north-south.
Okay.
So, but I would be in favor of sitting down, looking at the potential areas that we could allow, but I
Yes.
also would want to limit no more than 24 hours and
Okay.
not any place that would put those folks in danger because it's going to take our first responders.
Yeah.
It's going to put them in danger if they have to respond. So.
Okay.
Victoria?
I think that we also need to be cognizant of ADA issues.
Okay.
I think that, wheelchairs and people with disabilities, here, vision and otherwise, having to go out into an actual right of way to get around things. We need to have that somewhere built in there that we're looking at the whole picture and ADA is a big part of that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Right, one more thing,
Sure.
and the burning, the burning, I believe, is self-regulated through LRAPA in our agreement that open burning is only permitted certain times of the day, and they have to be on a half acre or larger.
Yeah.
So no burning.
Yeah.
Period.
I did bring up warming fires.
Yes.
It's an open burn.
I don't care. They're freezing to
Okay.
death. They need heat.
Well,
Yeah.
hang on a second. Like it can't be a food fight. So you want to jump in here, Steve, and then we'll go back to the queue?
It's just that it's just one way to get heat when it's 10 degrees outside and you're camping.
So my read on it is if it's 10 degrees outside, you need to go to the Egan Warming Center. And that we shouldn't.
Don't have enough people
Well-
don't have capacity there. Okay, cool.
Yeah, but that's why we've got a longer work session for this coming up. So I would imagine that's probably good feedback for us to dive into when we get into the broader work session. And again, I'm concerned about the environmental impact areas, safety impact areas, and especially, just understanding that no permanent structures in really that 24-hour period. Those are places that are beginning to jump up to me, but that's seems like it's pretty consistent among all the jurisdictions.
That's what I'm finding now. Yeah, you can look.
Okay, anybody
Sorry, I
else?
stepped on you there. Sorry. About
No,
that. I'm like hearing that. I feel like that.
we still have 8 minutes. We could dive into a whole other topic.
Did really well.
So the next time we meet, it's probably going to be a really that's the in-depth.
Yeah, so we are scheduled for March 6th, or the
Okay.
only item, I think we're the only item on. It's a work session, and I'm trying to think how to approach that. And what I'm thinking right now is more visual, like with a map and where we think camping is happening now. As a starting point to have a discussion about how would you like to regulate this now? You know what I mean? Like, here's where we think as I've been kind of working on this, someone gave me advice, like, look, what do you got in your community? What do you want to try and regulate? Don't try and regulate it if there's no there. That makes sense. So that's where I'd like to start, but I would like to have a map so you can
Okay.
react to, like, oh yeah, this area of town and this here, and here's what's here. And whether that's a series of maps or how we'll work that, I don't know.
Corey,
And our deadline for coming into compliance is the 1st of July.
It is the 1st of July. I'm trying to work towards public hearings for adoption of the ordinance in April, to give us a little time in case it takes more time. And also just the way the council schedule is, we have some 5th Mondays and stuff in June. So It'll be here before you know it.
I'm okay for that work session if between you and staff, if those sort of those environmentally, impacted areas or those safety areas, right? Like you preliminary sort of like cross them off and sort of explain it to
Okay.
us. That way we don't have to go through everything and
Yeah, that's
that
what I'm
one's-
trying to wonder how to narrow this in a way that still gives the options where you can ask questions or say, no, we want to look at this, but also not like, here's a map of our city, what do you want to do?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
this is a good start.
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to adjourn. We're going to stay in this room on this link. We were probably going to have another group of people come in here, so it may get a little bit cozy. So the two things I would ask is, those look like might be the bookmark folks. So they're going to be gone after about the first 10 minutes. If you need cards to sign up for public testimony, they're at the door, and then you give them to AJ. So we are going to adjourn. Thank you. All right. So we do have overflow space in the Jesse main room, which is the door, which is the room directly to our right. I would ask, we're gonna squeeze in and be pretty cozy. Most of the library bookmark winners are gonna probably be done in the first 10 or 15 minutes. So if you are waiting around on Linda Lane and if you're in a place where you could maybe make a little bit of space, I'm sure we'll have a chance to get you all back in here for your item as well. All right, AJ, are we recording? I'm going to call the regular session of the Springfield City Council to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon,
Here.
Counselor Weber.
Here.
Counselor Mo.
Here.
Counselor Rodley,
Here.
Counselor Doyle,
Here, thank you.
Counselor Pictionary.
Here, thank you.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
The United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we begin our meeting tonight, I would like to ask members of the audience who are joining us by phone or online to please keep yourselves on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. There is one time designated for public testimony this evening under business from the audience. If you're attending in person, please complete the request to speak card located at the entrance of the council chamber and give them to the city recorder. If you're joining us online with the tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak either of those times, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. The order of public testimony is as follows: anyone in person in the council chambers, and then anyone who has raised their virtual hand. And Neil, how many folks are joining us?
Mayor, this is my best guess, but approximately 150 in the council chambers and 27 online.
All right, thank you. Oh, we're gonna count and keep you and double check your math here. All right, first item, please.
First item is Springfield Upbeat. Item number 1 is Mayor's recognition, the 2022 through 2023 Springfield Public Library Bookmark Contest winners. And Mark Riddle is here for the staff report.
G'day. My name is Mark Riddle. I'm the Youth Services Librarian here at Springfield Public Library. For the past 41 years, the Springfield Public Library has run this bookmark competition. And tonight, we would really like to celebrate the winners of the 2022-2023 bookmark. Before we do that, a really big thank you to the Springfield Arts Commission for funding the bookmark this year. A big thank you to Doug Darling and the crew at the print shop. A big thank you to the Springfield Library staff and then other members of staff like custodial and security who voted on tonight's winners. So if you don't like that, take it up with everybody else. And for everybody else, there were 883 entrants this year. They blew us away. So a really big thank you to all of the students and the youth of Springfield and to their teachers, librarians, parents who supported them in designing these as well. So, oh yes, and if you'd like to see the rest, most of them are up in the children's gallery around outside the library. Everybody up here has their own set as well. And then the winning ones actually along the back wall. For anybody here, there's big versions in between all of the fantastic read posters. So you can check those out after the meeting. And then the runners up and the winners will be going up tomorrow. So the winners from kindergarten, Vivian Woods.
Over here with me. We're gonna hang out there. Yeah. All right, you're gonna hang out over here. Okay. A couple minutes.
Okay, Brooklyn Tiller was the first grade winner. Queen Village was second grade. Lane Maddox was the third grade winner. One of two fourth grade winners was Brennan LaPlante. And Ella Jordan was the other fourth grade winner. Bristol Martin won fifth grade.
You can scooch down this way.
That's Bristol. There we go.
Winning bookmark, congratulations.
Emma Lease was the sixth grade winner. Anna Marksbury in seventh grade. Jane Peters Geating was one of the two eighth grade winners. And the other eighth grade winner was Lily Chacon Palmas. Midori Midori Rakestraw was the ninth grade winner. Maggie Britton was the 10th grade winner. Grace Hallett was the 11th grade. And rounding out, Anna Grosnickel was our 12th grade winner. Congratulations to everybody.
Maggie, can you guys come down on this side? We're gonna get around the mayor, kind of put the mayor in the middle.
Anna, I think you're at the back, mate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Hurry now! I'm so sorry. Yeah, okay, let's hear it. Come on, let's get down. Yes.
Hold your bookmark so we can see it, but not in front of your face. How about that?
Okay, slide on in.
Right, everybody, get your photos in.
Good. All right, one more here. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.
That's hard.
It is. You got a tough job. Some babies.
Taking baby in the kitchen.
All right, we'll just give them a minute to
Thank you.
thank you guys. These bookmarks looks great. Get a big book for one of those bookmarks.
Go for their big ones.
All right, thank you for your patience, everybody. Next item, please.
Any other items under Springfield Upbeat, Mayor?
No, I think I'm
Okay.
gonna save that one for business from the
Okay, next item is consent calendar.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
all right, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Bradley,
Yes.
Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 nos. Next item, please.
You have no public hearings this evening, so the next item after that would be business from the audience.
All right. We've got quite a few cards this evening. So I'm going to call the folks up, and if you could come up, state your name, location in the city for the record, and then you will have 3 minutes. I went ahead and grouped these by topic so that it would be, because we only have, there's maybe 2 other topics that we need to get to, so that it's a little bit more consistent. First person, Margot Helphand.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to address you. My name is Margot Helfand. I actually live in Eugene, but I'm the chair of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Lane County. And our mission, one of our missions, is to educate and advocate on issues that are of vital importance to the Jewish community and the community at large, and respond to anti-Semitism and other forms of hate in our community. And of late, we, as many others, have been deeply disturbed by the anti-Semitic flying campaigns that have blanketed the Thurston neighborhoods. And they have been spreading anti-Semitic messages. We know that hate against one of us is hate against all of us. These campaigns were organized by an extremist hate group known for their anti-Semitic, racist, anti-immigrant flying efforts. There is no doubt that hate speech, bias incidents, and hate crimes cause actual harm, both to people who are targeted and to the wider community, everyone here. While the intent of this group was to spread animosity, divide, and create fear, we also have been deeply moved and heartened by the actions of community members in Springfield, particularly the neighbors whose homes were targeted by these disgusting leaflets and who spoke up and reported these and collected them and called us and banded together and wouldn't let this pass and just throw them away. We're also very grateful to the city of Springfield for their prompt response to these incidents and taking it really seriously. It means a lot. We can never be silent. Bias and discrimination rear their ugly heads, but love and solidarity can drown out hate. We must always be vigilant to stand together as a community, speak up, and affirm our common humanity in the face of baseless hatred. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. June Fothergill. June Fothergill.
How do I follow that? Oh, that was wonderful. June Fothergill, I live at 317 30th number 11 anyway, at Brentwood Estates. I appreciate the work that you guys are doing and will be doing on the camping issue and delving into what it's like to be a homeless person in Springfield and maybe finding ways to help. I hope that that can happen. I want to tell a brief story and then I have a couple points. One is that in the 10 years that I was the pastor at Ebert, I had ate with people who are unhoused every week, sometimes twice a week. That changes your perspective. I encourage you to find a way to do that. One thing that happened was one woman came in and she had what I call Vesuvius, you know, when someone just goes off, and she was upset about her life. I mean, she wasn't hurting anybody else. She was just having a, I can't deal with this anymore kind of feeling. And we just let her do that. That wouldn't do any good to try to stop her. But I walked over there and then I realized that I didn't need to be there. I could just witness, because as she settled down, I saw other homeless women come around her in tender concern and care that I got to witness. So anyway, I want to propose that the city council, first of all, issue a moratorium on citing people for violations of the current camping ban, at least until this process of review and development of a new policy based upon the current law is complete. And secondly, that the council direct the police department that complaints related to violations of the camping ban or nonviolent unhoused persons be handled by community service officers and procedure be developed for this. And thirdly, that the council direct the police department to be sure that all officers, and especially the community service officers, especially if we do number 2, have the city resource list available to give to unhoused persons and provide training. And we've said this many times on de-escalation and empathy for persons dealing with poverty and homelessness. And fourth, of course, that the new policy about camping, when it's complete, be shared widely, especially to those persons affected, our unhoused neighbors, police, and service providers. I want to add also, having listened to your discussion, that you, all of you, try to take some time to talk to an unhoused person or someone who has had that experience. You can't make a policy that's going to affect their lives if you have never sat down and really had a conversation with somebody, but what it's like to be out there. So please take time to do that. I encourage you. You can do it in lots of different ways. Mary Edith we've talked about ways you can do that, but I encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Bernice Pogue.
Hello. I'm sure a lot of you have witnessed or heard what happened between me and Officer Burke this weekend or whatever. I don't even know how long it's been. It's been so long. It was a sad thing, but it's a climate of that we're in right now. The way we treat people, the way we talk to people, it's breeding a lot of hatred and a lot of misunderstanding. And I just, even hearing you guys talk tonight about places and, make a move every 24 hours, people are people. That's why you have to change these laws now, because the courts are telling you these are people. So please try and word it as people, because we are people. Okay. And, I'm going to move every 24 hours. Think about that, maybe go out and try it, make sure it is what you would want, because you want them to get, be productive and move up. They got to get sleep. They have to have some stability. I yield my time.
Thank you. Rusty Earl.
Is there a way I can give a handout to you
Yeah,
guys?
you can
Is that-
give it to-
Okay. Thanks. I wanted to wait until everyone had everything. Sorry.
Well, you can start with your name and location.
Oh,
in the
that's
city.
right. So I'm Rusty Earl. I live at 1001 South 55th in Springfield. So I wanted to talk about, it was a topic that was brought up to me in our neighborhood, I think like a week ago, the Linda Lane annex discussion. And so I just wanted to go over a couple of quantifiable information that I put together. I live over in the area, not too far from it. I mean, I think it's less than a mile. And so I wanted to show a correlation with the type of housing that was proposed to be built there, the low income housing of manufactured homes. And so I wanted to show an overlay of crime related, and then also the distance between schools, the nearest bus routes in particular to where the Linda Lane is due to go in. Just from the visual aid, we can clearly see from really anything, it's the farthest point from schools. I wrote down how far those are at the closest schools, 1.5 miles away. And that's the Thurston High School. We have a straight line of sight. The closest bus station and store are over a mile away. Having grown up most of my childhood in poverty and low income housing and everything, walking a mile just to go to the store or even to get to the nearest transportation, especially my family was a family of 5 with 3 kids. I mean, that's a little rough. And we didn't always have a working vehicle to rely on. And a lot of my friends in the community we grew up in, they didn't have working vehicles that they could rely on either. So those are just data points that I was able to pull. And so as an opinion, personally, I wouldn't want something like, I'm not saying that there's not a need for this. There absolutely is a need for what's planned to go on. I just don't think it's the ideal location. That's my opinion on it. Also, the foot traffic or unwanted foot traffic in the area that it will bring, having it where it's at. We deal with an issue, we call it, my kids have dubbed them the tree people. But it's a tree line behind our house that backs up Mount Vernon Cemetery from our house facing east. And we've had issues with campers and stuff like that coming through there and break-ins within our neighborhood due to that. And so it's just something else that I don't want while my kids are, still so small and everything too. I just don't want that type of activity in our area. But again, just from the facts, it's the farthest point from really the basic necessities, the store, public transportation, stuff like that. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Lindsay Marche.
My name always gets fancier when I have someone else read it. Lindsay Marchant, 1089 Linda Lane. Thank you, City Council and Mayor Van Gordon for giving your time to serve Springfield. It seems the city's 34 acres off Linda Lane, purchased for the purpose of wetland banking, have been the only land considered for the lively funds designated for low-income mobile home park for the last year. In April 2022, Councillor Pictionary wisely advised that the city should include local homeowners and get a feel for the potential negative impacts this could have. Unfortunately, we were not included and instead found out less than 2 weeks ago that Linda Lane was a potential site by piecing together information from city council meetings, newspaper articles, surveyors walking around our private properties, and some email and phone conversations. Over the last week, city officials have been responding to homeowner inquiries with, "The process hasn't even begun," or nothing formal has been presented. That seems odd, as this potential development has been discussed an entire year earlier at a city council work meeting. It was presented by Aaron Fifield as item 6, the Linda Lane Mobile Home Park, and was presented as a way to use the funds Representative Lively secured. This was in February 2022. In the same month, the Register Guard ran a story on the potential site and funds and actually named Linda Lane. So does this mean that we are early in the process? Oh, I forgot one spot. These funds need to be awarded by June 30th, 2023, if I understand right. So I'm wondering if we're early or if the city's late, and it seems like it's rushing things through. We're disappointed in the lack of transparency. And by we, I mean every homeowner on Linda Lane and the combined efforts of the majority of homeowners in the neighboring 57th Street, Jasper Meadows, and Pinehurst neighborhoods. In only 4 days, we acquired more than 150 signatures of homeowners opposed to the plan that we are early for. KZI ran an article today talking about the Linda Lane site. Terry McDonald, the director of St. Vincent de Paul, was quoted as saying, "To get this kind of price point from the city of Springfield at a dramatically lower price, I think is important for the community," talking about the Linda Lane property. If this isn't in the works, can someone please let me know how Mr. McDonald knows the price point for the property he'll be buying? The 34-acre property was initially listed for over $1 million before decreasing substantially by the time the city purchased it in 2021 for only $450,000. I talked to the seller last week. He said there was interest early on by St. Vincent de Paul and other single-family home developers, but interest waned when developers understood the enormous costs associated with the development because of the city requirement that they gain a second access route. A second access is made nearly impossible by the extensive wetlands. These high-value wetlands are spread from the northeast side of the property diagonally across to the southwest and lead directly to the Willamette River. How does the city plan to protect those high-value wetlands?
Development of this property will be a monumentally, extremely expensive undertaking, and that's before you even break ground. The council will also need to address the issue of fire danger, significant increased traffic, the potential property loss of area homeowners, as well as the cost of building a 1,200-foot road down Linda Lane for just a first access to the property. With current road costs, the city could be spending almost $1 million without any other infrastructure. Each of these hurdles could be talked about extensively, but I've only got 3
Your
minutes.
time's up. Thank you.
Ashley Hicken. Hey. Ashley Hicken, hang on. If we can keep the applause to a minimum, it's going to make this go a lot smoother. Ashley Hicken, please.
My name's Ashley Hicken. I live at 5793 Cinder Street. I am currently serving as the secretary of the Jasper Meadows Homeowners Association. I don't know how many of you have actually been out towards Linda Lane, Jasper Meadows. And you may not be aware of this, but when the subdivision was built, it should have had 2 access roads. The first homes were put in at the northern end of the property, along with our entrance. And it's beautiful. If you've never seen it, there'll be flowers up in a few weeks. At the southern end of the property, there were so many wetlands that a secondary entrance was unable to be put in. The southern end of the property is covered in dry brush, grass, and trees. The streets of our neighborhood are quite narrow, and parking is only allowed on one side. I often find myself pulling over towards the side so another vehicle can pass me as I'm coming in and out of the subdivision. I want you to imagine for a moment that a fire has started at the southern end of our neighborhood. The winds carry the fire north. The residents and pets of 165 homes in Jasper Meadows, along with the 18 homes on South 57th and the cul-de-sac that adjoins to it, and the 10 homes on Linda Lane, they would all be exiting to Mount Vernon Road. We've had a member of the local fire department out to look at the property, as well as a 35-year veteran of the Forest Service. Both have confirmed that if a fire were to start, it would literally be unstoppable, and our neighborhood would be another paradise, California. The fire would have to be put out by helicopter. Would a helicopter be able to get there in time? Would we even have one available, or would it be fighting a wildfire somewhere else in the state? Anyone else, like Lindsay mentioned, who's looked at purchasing the land, was told of the astronomical costs to develop the road to create that secondary access. When asked how the city planned to address the access road problem, a community development division employee said one possibility was that they would just put sprinklers in all of the dwellings that are proposed to be built, implying that the city has no intention of creating a secondary access road, nor do they intend to hold themselves to the same standard that other developers would be held to. This is not only irresponsible, but it's not an appropriate solution. If the city intends to do eminent domain through South 57th, that doesn't mitigate the risk of fire danger. If you intend to push a road through Mineral Way and across the wetlands, that doesn't mitigate the risk either, because everyone ends up leaving the neighborhood to Mount Vernon Road. For the city FAQ that came out Friday, you anticipate 28 units per acres on up to 27 acres. This means you would have an additional 756 residents trying to evacuate onto Mount Vernon Road in case of a fire. My question to you is, what are you thinking? What is the value of one life? This would be nearly just shy of 1,000 lives if there was one person in every home. The loss of life would be astronomical, and the city would likely be liable for not providing proper fire escape routes. What do you guys think about this as a council? Thank you.
Hang on, guys, can you keep the applause down, please? We want to get through this as quickly as possible. We're not trying to silence anybody. It's just sort of basic decorum. Please, thank you. Renee Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Renee Ellis. I'm a resident of the Jasper Meadows 3rd Edition. I'm also a member of the Mackenzie River Trust and a land steward for one of their conservation easement properties. I'm speaking tonight about that 34 acres on adjacent to Linda Lane. I'd hoped that the additional information you gave us would answer questions about this, but it served only to bring up more questions regarding the high value wetlands on that site. You state that the parcel of 34 acres was purchased for banking in a wetland mitigation bank to offset the unavoidable loss of wetlands by a sewer project, as is required by state law. You further say you're working with the state lands department to place 7.5 acres of these wetlands into a conservation easement, leaving the remaining 27 acres for possible development for 28 per net acre or a minimum of 40 units. On this map of field delineated wetlands done by an environmental engineering firm Wank, there is one large wetland of 7.04 acres, several other small areas totaling 6.67 acres for a total of 13.71 acres, which are all actually connected by various inflow streams. What is the fate of these additional wetland pieces? Are you banking this parcel only to mitigate the destruction of half the wetlands? I cannot see how any development of that parcel can be accomplished without significant degradation and loss to the high value wetlands, which is exactly what a conservation easement is supposed to prevent. The necessary grading, trenching, filling, added hardscape, the restructuring of the topography cannot possibly be accomplished without significant and extremely costly efforts to guard against degrading the wetlands you claim to be preserving. You cannot eliminate half of them without affecting all of them. Where is the enforcement and oversight going to be for this to ensure that roadblocks set up by a conservation easement and the requirements of a mitigation bank are not simply blown through by those promoting an as yet unknown number and type of housing on that parcel? It is impossible not to wonder how this wetland can be protected and at the same time cut in half and subjected to a significant development by any of the options mentioned in your FAQ. Who will be on site to monitor and prevent the inevitable detrimental effects of such construction? I wanted to come here tonight as an advocate and an ally. I really did. But the more I find out, the less I can support this land as an appropriate place for development. It seems wholly and completely incompatible with the preservations of wetland by allowing development that will clearly impact them significantly, if not over time destroy them. You cannot reshape the topography, pave over surrounding areas that feed and support these wetlands and say they won't be harmed. You seem to have set up a serious dichotomy of purpose with this. I do hope there's transparency going forward and a sincere regard for the fate of these wetlands. There aren't many left. It makes it all the more important to sustain, restore, and protect the ones that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we got a lot of cards to get through. I'm gonna stop here. We're at our 20 minutes. I'm gonna look to the rest of the council. Well, let me tell you how many cards I've got left and get a head nod if you guys want to continue. There's 4 cards left. Okay. Okay. Jerome Cortez.
Hello, I'm Jerome Cortese and I live at 1839 South 57th Street. And I believe that you guys have been misinformed on the facts of this wetlands that sit here, that they talk about the proposal of developing. I bought my home before they even built it. And what it was is I bought it and they built it out. And then so what I did was I've been walking for 15 years in the neighborhood. So I'm really well understanding all where the water flows. And on the other side of Bob Straub's, it's called Pebble Court, they built some houses in here and you have the water, it runs down towards these wetlands and runs into the wetland. There's almost like a river running this way and you have a creek that runs in front of my property that goes down. So being misinformed of all the water has to go into this creek that comes down. So when you're not informed of, okay, we have all the water from the hill and they're talking about building a school up in that area there too. So that water is going to come down towards this wetlands that are here. So I have the maps here. I don't know if you guys need to see it, but they just made a proposal just showing that this was all buildable property and this is all buildable property off of Linden Lane. That's not true. This area down here below by the park is all wetlands. And if you look at this map here, it shows a big area of wetlands. So when you're not being informed of the truth of the wetlands and where all the water comes from, so even from Linden Lane, that water is going to come down and go into that creek. So the more developing that you do, the more runoff you're going to have. So what's going to cause could cause a tremendous amount of flooding. So what I was trying to do is I was trying to make them redirect the water that goes from the basically there's a park that comes down this way. There's like So what they did was they built a road and a sewer line that goes from the 57th Street and it kicks over and goes up to where you're going to connect into the all these houses in here, and you're going to connect into the school that they're talking about building. Well, along that pathway, there's a creek that runs down. That's almost, they call it wetlands, but I had to have them reinstall more pipes to go through. What they had, they were only going to put 3 pipes in this road that they built over the top of that wetlands there, which is kind of, you know, I'll call it a creek. And so what they did was I made them put 7 more pipes. So I went over there to the housing development. I said, well, before you sign off on all this property, you know, you got to make sure that this water all flows the way it's supposed to. So the more developing you do, the more water is going to go into this system. And the more you build out and don't allow any water to go, that's going to allow flooding. So if flooding occurs, it's going to come down this way, you know, because water goes downhill. So all the water, and especially behind all this park and this development here on the other side of Bob's Drop, all this water here is going to come down this way. So all the water that comes down floods this out. So I just thought I'd let you guys know that the flooding is a big problem. And I hope you guys address that.
Thank you. Barbara Von Deether?
I'll change my name to Smith. Nobody else will ever mistake the pronunciation. I am Barbara Von Deether, and I live at 5786 Cinder Street. I am the president of the Jasper Meadows Homeowners Association. You met Rusty. Rusty's the president of the Pinehurst HOA. And you heard from Lindsay. Lindsay is representing the homeowners on Linda Lane. Between us, we bring to you tonight the observations of 247 homeowners who live adjacent to this property, less than 1/10 of a mile from this property. And we're concerned. We haven't seen all of the details yet. Mayor, we thank you very much for the summary that you gave us on Friday. That's the first we knew of any detail that was going on. And we only found out 10 days ago about this. So we're grateful for that very good summary that you gave us. And while I was looking around for a way to talk about this, I came across a what's called a common law principle, and it's supported by case law. And it says that every homeowner is entitled to object to a public or private nuisance that interferes with the quiet enjoyment of property. What is the quiet enjoyment of property? Well, our wetlands are part of it. We love walking our dogs there. In a warm summer night, we can walk out our door, any of us, 247 people, and we can hear the frogs in those wetlands talking to each other. It is charming. We can one day take our kids and say, hey, go on down to the park. I'll be there in a minute. Guess what? They're safe, completely safe. Or there's the morning that we came in and we left some tools in the back of our pickup truck. The next morning we get up and eat breakfast and realize, oh my gosh, I left the tools in the back of my pickup truck. And we go outside and they're still there. The quiet enjoyment of our property. Now, we've been talking about homeowners here, and I looked up those 4 pages, Mr. Mayor, that you gave to us on Friday, loaded with detail. I read every word. The word homeowner is not there. The word resident is there, but I'm representing homeowners, homeowners who vote and vote on homeowners who pay taxes. You're here, you're spending the money that you collect from us. And so when I talk about the enjoyment of our property, would you move next to this proposed trailer park? We've heard various
Thank you, Barbara.
numbers of trailers or
Barbara.
whatever they're going to do.
Barbara.
I'm done. I think I made my
Three minutes goes really quick.
Thank you
Thank
very
Barbara.
much, Mr. Mayor.
Barry, please. Thank you. I was going to try.
You should try. Barry Barrow, 951 South 55th Street, Springfield in the Pinehurst HOA. I've noticed in today's world is that there is such a dichotomy of interest. And I don't envy any of you having to listen to all the differences and then try and figure out what's the best thing to do. Yes, there's laws out there that you have to follow. And sometimes I wonder how you can follow them when it's hard to know all the laws that continue to be enacted. My heart goes out to homeless people. Some of them might be that way of choice. Some of them, they lost their job during a downturn in the economy. I don't know how I would vote because there's so many different special interests that have even been presented, a different viewpoint of why it's important, from wetlands to community safety to a myriad of things. And any one of us, it's easy to vote if we take a look at the things that are most important to us. But I have to remember the things that are most important to me may not be important to someone else. And it's even harder if you don't even live in that type of area. My house faces east. So we have the power lines going right through there, a place that I never thought I'd live close to. And once all the trees were cut down there, I thought, man, I'm never going to live there. And yet I do. And we have that row of trees where homeless people have set up tents, started fires and all of that stuff. And but then again, I'm glad I don't live in Portland where all that went on. And so I don't know what the answer is. I don't envy you. I hope all of us can understand it's not an easy decision. Hopefully everything is transparent and everything is looked at and things don't get rushed into. And I'll save 43 seconds for other people to clap some other time.
Thanks, Barry. Jason Prophet.
Hey, thanks for letting me come down. 657 Quarry Road up here underneath the water tower. So I'm gonna bring everything back to this end of the town. And down here at our museum Friday. And for some reason, there's not a plaque marking our namesake for the town. The museum's asking for a history marker here on B Street, I think, certain B. My other issues, the little Fast and Furious cars that we've talked about, the noise, people are talking about listening to the frogs. I have the same wetlands. So my resolve to the noise and the speed in town is to shift the traffic police from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Now, I know there's probably some union rules these guys have to follow. If we can double up 3 weeks, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, in the evening and get these little cars shut down. It's not all the little Fast and Furious cars. I can hear a lot of pickups, unmuffled pickups. I come across 105 today at 68 miles an hour. People are passing me at 80 going east. So we got to get the traffic and the noise and the speed slowed down. So again, thanks for your time. Try to get the museum their plaque.
We'll get on it. Thank you. I do not have any other cards. Neil, do you have anybody online?
Just give them a moment, but I don't see any hands at this time.
Okay, so we got a couple issues here. So just can somebody from the PD maybe talk to Mr. Prophet about his idea, since we've got a couple of folks here about his patrol idea. And before I open this up for council response, maybe we can have Jeff come up and give us a summary about where we are with the Linden Lane. I know there was reference to the FAQs a couple of times. If you have not seen them, I believe they're over on that table over there. So Jeff, could you just maybe give us a brief update about where we're at?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Pascal, Community Development Director. I think really the FAQ lines it out pretty well. I mean, just the history and everything of how we got here. The fact that we're moving forward with Jasper Phase 3, which is to open up the rest of Jasper Natron for urban level development, the rest of the urban growth boundary. We got stuck because we had wetlands that we were going to impact with that sewer project. Those wetlands weren't available in the local wetland bank. This property happens to have the right amount of wetlands to move that project forward to put into a conservation easement. So that's where we're at. We're currently getting the conservation easement figured out, that size of it. It's got to be buffered. And then the next step was, and when we talked to council about even buying the property, we heard from council, well, we don't need all 34 acres. We want to make sure that we figure out what we can do with that property as surplus and where we go with that. We're really kind of not even at the first step, which is annexing it, to start figuring that out. So we just initiated annexation. Well, not really initiated. We had our development issues meeting, which discussed what would be the requirements of annexing that property. The next step after that would be a conversation with council regarding what portions of the property are left to develop. And then how do we do that, partitioning, subdividing, what comes next following annexation?
Does anybody have any questions for Jeff? Go ahead.
Okay. So there is no promises made to St. Vincent de Paul's yet, correct?
Correct. We don't have, some of the questions we're getting are like, what ifs, and we don't have a development proposal.
I'm just trying to dispel some of the folks, and you folks know, I mean, I hear you, every one of you. I understand every one of you, your concern. But I also want you to know that I'm not unique. I think everybody here on council wants to definitely hear every single thing about this. We haven't committed anything. We haven't nodded our head on anything. So it's take a breath. Don't panic. We're here and we're listening. Okay, really.
Yeah, I heard.
That's my promise to you.
Thank you, Counselor. I heard a couple things. We haven't even talked about price. We don't even know how much acreage is left to be developed. We know that the conservation easement is going to be around probably 11 acres. Looking at the shape, what's left, where are the other wetlands? Because we do have all of the wetlands delineated. We have that mapped. We've surveyed the property. And so we haven't, that's kind of that piece, first annexation, then figure out what's left, come to the council, have that conversation about what's left, how could it be developed, or in the city's not really in the business of developing. It's how can we find the surplus property and what do we do next with that piece of property? The other reason for annexation, we've heard different areas is protection of that, fire protection, police protection. We have to protect those wetlands. So if there's camping or something else like that going on in there, it's easier if it's inside the city limits, because then we can rely on our own police department rather than the county sheriff.
And so what you're saying and what I'm hearing is that this is baby steps, and we're going to look at each step very carefully before any decision is made.
Yeah, we're even at baby steps with staff. Like I said, we just had our development issues meeting and talked about what the requirements would be for annexation.
And we don't even know which way they're going to go at this point. We don't know what's going to be required of us, what's going to be needed, who's going to do what. We're not there yet. Is that right?
Victoria.
So I want to say thank you to all of you. And for those of you that live west of Bob Straub, I believe you are my people. So I am Ward 5 counselor, and I want you to know that I understand. I get where your hesitancy is and your lack of trust. And I want you to know that I hear you and I want to be a voice for you. I have cards here I want to give you. It has my phone number on it, and I want to be in touch with you. And I promise you that I will stay in touch with you and keep you informed along the way as much as I possibly can so that there's transparency. I promise you that right here in front of everybody.
But I'm going to hold her to it.
And he's next door in 6. So.
All right, Jeff, come back. I got a couple more questions. Don't worry. As soon as we're done asking questions, we're going to ask Jeff to meet with you guys outside, and if anybody wants to hang around and ask a couple more questions. I would encourage you guys to read the FAQs. It sounds like some of you guys have. So could you comment to the House bill that is referred to, like the Representative Lively, the money that came from 2018? Is that linked to Linda Lane at all?
Yeah, no, it's not linked. And I think there is also, Eric can speak to the June 30th, but I think there is some misconception on what that June 30th meant. The council already took action. So there isn't like a looming deadline.
Okay, so can somebody speak to the question about that was the other question that I heard sort of consistently. It's like, well, what's happening with this, with the 6:30 deadline?
I'll let Erin, because she knows, and I'll just mess it up.
Calling in the big guns.
Erin Fifield, the 6:30 deadline was for Oregon Housing and Community Services to award those funds. So in the fall, council gave direction to Nancy Newton to sign an IGA with OHCS that said we were committed to awarding those funds to St. Vinny's for a new manufactured home park in Springfield. There is no location tied to that award, just recognizing the need for affordable housing in this community. So the June 30th deadline was for OHCS to award those funds. And in signing that IGA and sending that money to the city of Springfield, they met that deadline.
Okay, thank you. And then last question, Jeff, is when you think about, like, right now we're working on the wetlands and we're working on annexing it from a staff perspective. When roughly would be the first conversation for council about what we would do with the developable land?
The council could have those conversations when we bring, once we have the mapping done. I'm thinking fall, maybe we're having those conversations before any sort of partition or subdivision. And I use those, so I think subdivision, everybody thinks it could be like the Jasper Meadows. So under Oregon state law, you can only partition into 3 parcels. And so depending on how the wetlands, the reason I use subdivision is we may have to call it a subdivision if, say, there's 5 parcels and they're not really connected, depending on how we do that. And so we wouldn't be going and doing a city subdivision of 3,000 square foot lots. I'm mostly looking at this of the efficiency of what size lots. The one benefit for the city having control of the lot right now is we did hear a lot of conversation about needs for secondary access for protection, fire protection, and just traffic in general. That has been one of the hangups with this lot. And also not being able to ensure if another developer had that. So the council will also have that opportunity when we bring that mapping, if the council chooses to continue moving forward with the process of entitling those right of ways already, ensuring that whether the road gets built, when they sell that lot, that road will get built where we want it to get built.
Okay. Any other questions? So I'm gonna ask Jeff, and maybe if, and any other staff folks that have information, if somebody wants to hang out, in the hallway and chat and ask some questions of Jeff, that would be a good opportunity to connect with him and exchange information. Jerome, I know you've got you've got a lot of information about where the wetlands are, and that's the guy to give it to. So thank you, Jeff. Is there any other council response to other items? Corey Rodley.
Thank you. So I want to thank everyone who came and shared tonight on all of the topics. And I know we all received a lot of emails. I've been in many conversations the past couple of weeks. People have found me in all sorts of places to talk about the things. And for me, there's this overarching theme of who belongs in Springfield, who gets to decide who belongs in Springfield, from the anti-Semitic and hate activity out in Thurston to Bernice Pogue's interaction with the police and these ideas of who our neighbors are. And this has been sitting really heavily with me because we say, and I was there for the State of the City where the mayor said, you know, this is a city of opportunity. You belong here, your families belong here. And I think that in order for us to make that happen, we have to take a beat and really think about, you know, are we willing to make room and to adjust how we do things so that everyone gets to feel safe and everyone gets to feel like they belong. I looked at the artwork by the children, and it was, you know, the theme was find your voice, and you're going to see lots of rainbows, which I'm here for those rainbows, and these kiddos talking about finding their place, finding their voice. And to me, that is the future of Springfield. And so this has been the what's been weighing with me is like, how do we make room, and how do we separate land from people, and how do we separate streets from people? So I just wanted to just share that with you all, that I think that if we're going to be a town of opportunity, and if we're going to want businesses to want to locate here, and we're going to want people to want to move here, we're going to have to really think about how welcome we are, and whether or not people really do feel like they belong, and everyone feels like they belong. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next item, please.
Mayor, the next item is a resolutions. You have one resolution of necessity for the Jasper Trunk Sanitary Sewer Extension Phase 3. That's P21065. This is resolution number 2, a resolution exercising the power of eminent domain and authorizing a resolution pursuant to ORS 223.005, ORS 223.105, and ORS 35.600-625 concerning acquisition of easements and or right-of-way necessary for Jasper Trunk Sanitary Sewer Extension Phase 3 Project P21065, and Jesse Jones is here virtually for the staff report.
Okay, just hang on, Jesse. We got folks that are exiting since they've met their one item, and we'll get back to you. All right, Jesse, you are up.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, counselors. My name is Jesse Jones. I'm a civil engineer in the Department of Public Works, and I'm the project manager for the Jasper Trunk Sewer Extension project that was referenced just now. We're here tonight to quickly discuss this resolution of necessity, and I wanted to show you a map, a vicinity map to get you oriented here. So I will, AJ, is it possible to get screen sharing? All right, thank you. Here we go.
Okay.
Yep, got it. Okay, so this map on the left shows Springfield, and what we're talking about, the Jasper Trunk Sewer, is down here in southeast Springfield. So if we look over on the other map here, this is Bobstraw Parkway down here. This is the Jasper Meadows subdivision up here, and this is Mountain Gate over there in the upper right corner. The Jasper Trunk Sewer project is a multi-phase project. We've constructed the first 2 phases. It started at the 42nd and Jasper roundabout and has come east following the Jasper road alignment. And right now we're working on the 3rd phase, and that starts here just south of Mount Vernon. This is the Linda Lane property for reference right here, right next to us. And this is the project. The Jasper Trunk Sewer project is the project that's benefiting from the conservation easement that's referenced on Linda Lane there. So as part of this project, the trunk sewer, we're coming down Jasper Road here, and we're crossing Bobstraw Parkway and terminating at the former Brand S mill site. And this is opening that area up for future development, which was referenced earlier as well. So as part of this project, we need to acquire easements across these 5 parcels here, these kind of 5 larger parcels across here. These are 2 types of easements that we're looking for. The first is permanent easements, and those easements will allow us to maintain and access the sewer line once it's constructed. The other type of easement is called a temporary construction easement, and those easements are they give us more room to work while we're actually doing the construction. And then once the construction is complete, those easements get extinguished or end. So these types of easements are considered partial takes, and it still allows the property owner to retain some rights of use for the property in the future. It's not considered a full take, like such as right of way. There are no existing businesses or buildings that will be affected by this easement acquisition. So the resolution of necessity is a kind of a formality. It allows us to start the easement acquisition and negotiation process. You may have seen these resolutions of necessity in the past. They're required when there's a federal funding component for projects. The city attorney has recently advised us that we need to use these resolutions of necessity for all of our easements going forward, regardless of the funding sources. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Hang on one second. Mary Bridget, could you help give us a little bit more context here to your advice?
Sure.
And then we'll go to Joe.
So a resolution of necessity is the first step in a potential eminent domain or condemnation action. It doesn't mean a lawsuit would be filed. It is the first step, then allows the government then to negotiate with the property owner. In this case, it's for an easement for the sewer project. And it is subject to state law and the process. So we have asked for capital projects, in addition to larger projects, even smaller projects, that staff come through with the resolution of necessity, so they don't have to go back and start over if they do get into a place where they can't negotiate with a property owner, that they just take care of this ahead of time. So really, that's what we're doing today. And then the project can move forward for them to try and acquire the easement or the temporary construction easement, which allows them to access the property during construction of the project.
Joe.
So I just wanted to ask if oh, there he is. So you're talking about allowing the property owner to regain access to that property, or are they, how much are they losing access, or is it just a temporary thing? And if they're losing access, how much are they losing?
Yeah, I can answer that. So there's two things happening. A temporary construction easement is just that temporary, like they would allow us to use more of their property to construct it, and then we would
Moving
restore
equipment.
Property. Sorry.
Is that like moving equipment and whatnot?
Yeah, a little bit extra space because it's a 5,000-foot long project in a narrow corridor, so it just allows us to get equipment back and forth. The permanent easement, how these have worked in the past on other phases of Jasper Trunk, we're left with an access road. So this easement's about 20 feet wide. 20 to 30 feet wide and over the length of the project. They are still allowed to, they still own the property, but the easement allows us to access it and maintain it. So we use our sewer, our Vector trucks go in and clean the manholes and clean the lines out. Easements, each type of easement is subject to a different restriction. They couldn't build a house on this easement, but they could use it, potentially it could be used to satisfy some of their landscaping square footage requirements on their parcel. So it's considered, it does limit they don't have full use of the property, but they do retain some rights. And it's very specific to the type of easement or the type of use.
So basically no structures, no permanent structures, and they allow access for whatever reason, whether it be agricultural or cosmetic, but they don't actually just like lose the ability to use their land.
Correct. Yeah, and it is. It's,
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Victoria?
So are we doing it this way rather than putting it in the road on our in right of way because it's easier? Because an easement means that they have their property, but let's face it, they're still paying taxes on it, but they can't like build anything. They lose, in a sense, the use of that.
That's correct. Their use is limited. We've done extensive studies about how to route the sewer line through this area. And it's not feasible. The railroad tracks block. It's more expensive and very difficult to go underneath like we'd have to crisscross and go underneath the railroad tracks and then back under the railroad tracks and in the middle of Jasper Road, which
Right.
would be, and this is very deep lines. We'd basically be removing Jasper Road to put the sewer line in and then replacing Jasper Road and then having to still go under the railroad tracks.
Gotcha.
In this particular case too, these property owners, they can't develop their property unless the sewer line goes in. And so they're in favor of it. They're in favor of the development because
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So you've got the pulse of those people. They know what you're considering.
correct. Absolutely.
Just,
Yeah.
I hear the word eminent domain and the hair on the back of my neck just stands up. Because
Yep, that's why we're here tonight
no
to
problem with
explain.
that. So, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You're up.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2.
Second,
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
yes.
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos. Next item, please.
The next item is under business from the city council. This is the Ward 4 City Council resignation acceptance and interim council appointment process discussion. And Mary Bridget Smith is here for the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here today. Neil Ladati and I are working on the project for the council vacancy and the process for appointing the interim councilor for Ward 4. So this evening, there are 2 items before the council tonight. One is a more of a formality, but it's to officially accept Councilor Stair's resignation, which was the attachment in your packet. So I will be asking for a vote to accept that resignation and then hoping to get some feedback from the council about the process for appointing the interim counselor, with the idea that we'll come back to you at the February 21st meeting to have a public hearing on that process and have the council formally adopt it so we can open the applications and move that forward. So if you wouldn't mind just handling the acceptance of the resignation with a motion and a vote, and then we can chat.
Mary Bridget, if we vote no, does he have to come back?
Yeah, but we have to go find him, so we are.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the resignation of Leonard Steer as Ward 4 City Councilor and find the position vacant. Provide guidance on the process for appointing an interim city councilor necessitated by the vacancy.
Second,
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos.
Great. So if we could just take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the process. The last interim counselor was Counselor Pitts for Ward 1. That process took about 60 days when the council did that before. So I thought what we could do is just kind of using that as our basis, go through sort of chronologically the steps, and you can give me some feedback, and then we'll have something more formal for you at the next meeting. So obviously it starts with the application. Like I said, last time it was open 30 days. Just wanting to make sure that you think that's an acceptable amount of time to have enough time to advertise it out to the community, get people to be able to turn their applications in, and then you would be able to have time to evaluate it after. Does that sound okay? All right.
Yes, I'm seeing head nods.
Okay. And then the format, it's been a written application, then it's the same application for everybody. You can get it through the city manager's office or our website. It was based similarly to like a council committee application. So it has questions like, you know, why do you want to be an interim counselor, your qualifications and what your priorities, and also some information about the time commitment, because as you know, the counselor time commitment can be, you know, no thing. So
Corey,
any input on the application? Yes.
Corey.
And I know that we haven't had this conversation council-wide again yet. But I'm thinking to some of the feedback we had from Counselor Pitts and that process, and just ways to make it very clear what is all the ways it is permissible. So if we are going to accept resumes, if people, all of those things, that if you were someone who didn't have access to the political process and didn't know, well, I'm going to have meetings with people and I'm going to do all this stuff, that if there is some way that we can include information or exclude information to make it more equitable. So it's not like somebody gives us a big fat packet and people think that's great. And somebody who doesn't know just answers the questions within the thing, which was part of, Counselor Pitts's response. So if there's a way to say, whatever, like, we will, feel free to attach a resume or these things. I think it would be just whatever we can do to make it really clear.
To clarify whether people can do that or cannot do that.
Right.
And is there any feelings on the council either way? Do you have a strong feeling either way? Sometimes we will on like requests for proposals or job applications be like, this is the, application, like don't go beyond here. And often in these interim council roles, sometimes people will, they'll, like you said, they'll attach their resume or all kinds of stuff that's not really applicable to the application, but is more information about the person. So Councilor Pitt's feeling was unfair because there would be one person might have a whole lot of information submitted, another person followed the directions of the application and submitted less. So we could definitely put something on the application that says stick to the application or please add more, that clarification. Any thoughts?
Cover letter or
Yeah.
something, because a cover letter kind of
Cover.
highlights your why you're interested in the position.
Okay.
Because a cover letter would help you like highlight your reasons for wanting to apply and why you think you'd be good at the job, right? Not, I mean, your resume is great, but it's just sort of like what you've done, but like to actually get a chance to tell the council why.
Okay.
Joe.
So those application questions were put together for a reason to try to determine whether or not a person is most applicable or most qualified. So however I want to put it, I don't care, as long as those basic questions where I can look at that and get a basic picture of who I'm looking at.
Okay.
So I don't care with the format, but I would like to make sure we have all the information and not a fourth of it.
Okay. So same questions from each person and adequate enough to make your decision.
Yeah.
So questions like your,
Why do you want
why
to
do you want to do this? What are your qualifications? What are your priorities? Do you understand the time constraints?
Yeah, as long as we get the basics, I don't care
That's what it
how
was
it gets
like.
to us. Yeah.
Okay.
For me.
So I think do we have work session time or are you going to write this up and bring it back to?
I'm going to bring it back to you though for a public hearing,
Okay,
in regular
okay.
session. Yeah. So could there be those questions plus a cover letter?
That would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
I would be fine with that.
Does that sound good?
Yep.
And then be specific on the application, like this is your chance.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. And then we will include that in the next packet so you can get an idea of how that will look. All right, and then once the applications are in, then what you did last time, and I would recommend that you do this again, is you have work session time to evaluate the applications, determine at that point, who, because most likely the step after that are interviews, in-person interviews. So depending on the number of applications, you may decide we'll interview everybody, or we'll just interview a few people, or we'll leave it open, maybe to have more applicants, kind of depending, but it's a nice kind of check-in point, decision point about what you're going to do next. Does that sound like okay? Okay, all right. And then in-person interviews for applicable candidates after that point.
Joe.
So we don't know how many people are going to be interested. I don't know if we have that many crazy people in town, but if we get a plethora, a bunch, it would be nice to be able to have some sort of scoring system to where we can move people forward, some sort of objective scoring system of some sort that, if we get 40 folks, I'm not interested in interviewing 40 folks.
Last time you had, I believe, 8 people.
Yeah,
I don't think you interviewed everybody. I think you sorted those out, but it's hard to know what that criteria is.
I don't remember the system we used.
About, yeah.
Actually, I remember us interviewing
Did you interview all 8?
That's right.
Okay.
We did.
Yep. So I would think we would have, work session time the first, I don't know, Monday after in April.
Yes, would be the next potentially available time. if
And
it's
then,
available.
and then we can, kind of, scope out depending on how many applications we have. Corey.
I have a very Mary Bridget question.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
So, on the flip side of it, let's say we get 2 people and if we don't feel like, do we have to choose one of those people, or could we go out for a repost or keep it open, or?
You can go back out or you can keep it open.
Okay.
Our charter or code does not have a time requirement, like some places will have a time requirement, or you have to go into a special election. We do not have that. So that's a good check-in point to determine whether, oh, okay, hey, maybe we need to get more out to the community so folks know this is open, or yeah, we're happy, you know, we got a good number of folks.
Could you actually make that clear in the process documents?
Yes,
So
that
that
will
we
be.
have, okay, good.
Definitely. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And that was my next point. So timing. So I think that we'll have to work with the city manager's office for the schedule, but potentially in April would be when you would be able to come back and see how many applications you got and what you want to do from there. The interview questions, then we have a set of 10 interview questions we can bring to that April meeting, and you can determine, do you still want to use those or use different ones, or how you want to work that. So that could happen there if that works. Just a note, you do have budget committee meetings in April, starting April 25th. Just in terms of timing, if you're thinking you want to have special meetings or not have special meetings, you're already going to be meeting a lot in April. So something to keep in mind for schedule. And then the voting, I don't think I would have a specific process for voting, but that it is vote by majority, and really kind of depends how many people you have at that point, how you narrow it down, but we can deal with that then. And then public engagement. Already talking with city manager's office about ways to engage folks in Ward 4 to let them know that this is out there, and try and get applicants, interested people.
So based on this schedule, there would be, we're running a real risk that this person will be joining budget committee that's already in flight.
Potentially, but last time, I mean, if you're going in April, let's say you do get into that April 3rd meeting, you'll have that work session, then you need to schedule the interviews at other meetings. I'm guessing it's going to be into May would be my thought, but hoping to work with the city manager's office on Friday for the schedule.
Okay, perfect. Are there any other questions?
Okay. So we'll come back to you in February with a process that people can react to in a public hearing. It will have some flexibility depending on number of applicants and kind of checkpoints for the council at the time. And then the application will be in that packet as well.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Next item.
Any other business from the city council?
Well, go ahead.
Is this the part where we talk about when we went to meetings and stuff?
Yes, but don't get that far.
Okay.
What, Mary Bridget, come back
That's
first.
right. Yeah. Okay.
She didn't see the queue. For business for the council, Mary Bridget has the first item.
I'd like to talk to the council about the letter from EPUD that you received on February 1st, and then I had sent you a memo about a potential response to that. So EWEB sent the council and the subboard a letter on February 1st and asked for a specific response. In your rules, there are ways that the council can respond to a letter. It goes to agenda review initially. So we had time on Friday to discuss it just with a draft. Didn't make any comments about the draft, but just be able to move it forward to you all. And then you can discuss that draft here and then vote potentially if you'd like to amend that letter, send no letter, have discussion about it, whatever you would like to do. I do have hard copies here. I have a couple hard copies of the EPUD letter, and then I have hard copies of the draft letter if anybody needs. Good. Okay. The letter really essentially says, this is not our place to make a comment about whether it would be appealed or not. We're a separate body. We appreciate that we're both, you know, that sub's created out of the charter, and that may be confusing, but that's not how we see it. And we can't comment on whether sub will appeal or not. So any discussion or amendments to the letter, I'm happy to hear it.
Corey?
Thank you. Did you have your hand up first?
Yeah.
What? Yes, no. Okay. Because I don't want to be a big hog. One, I want to just say that the letter, as far as I'm concerned, is fine as is.
Okay.
Secondly, just in a space, I want to say how much I appreciate all of the time that staff has spent in the reaction to this. Especially like in the moment, because I think I was the canary in the coal mine on that, because it came up at a meeting and I was like, what happened here? So I just want you all to hear that I appreciate the immediacy and the professionalism and all of the time it has taken Springfield City staff to respond to something that we are not responding to. So thank you.
Any other questions? Steve?
I don't know if it's a question, but I have a comment.
Sure.
And that is about having the control of electricity inside the urban growth boundary or city limits.
Mhm.
I don't think that should happen because how do we plan for the city? How do we plan for growth? How do we plan for growth in that area? And another example of how that happened before Glenwood, when it went from Eugene to Springfield urban growth boundary, EWIB just signed off. Became sub just like it. No controversy at all. Very simple. Should be able to happen this way.
All right. Joe,
I like the letter as it is, and I would like to go ahead and weigh in on wanting to move that forward, please. Thank you.
So if we could do a motion and a vote, and then we can get this out the door.
I'd like to make a motion to have the letter as drafted sent on behalf of the city to EPUD.
Second.
all right, call the vote, please.
Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo.
Yes.
Counselor Bradley,
Yes.
Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
All right, the motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, and I will just note that I have both expressed my deep frustration with both bodies about how we're getting dragged into this.
Great. Thank you.
All right, Victoria.
Okay, I'll make it quick because we all want to go home. I went to the historic commission meeting and when I first got assigned this, I was like, I don't know anything about this historic commission. And really neat group of people. They've had a lot of turnover recently, but I actually ended up meeting with Christine Bowe, who's works with Lama Lane, and she's the chairperson or the president, and kind of got a feel for what they're doing and stuff. And one of the projects that's on their radar is to try to do an inventory of all of the land that's within like the Washburn district that's historic, right? And to try to get kind of a feel for that. And the one thing that was wild was that they were doing it on this like hairpin budget. Like their budget to me just was so fine, and they were trying to pull like $100 here and $500 there. And so when I talked to her, I'm like, how do you guys do this on that little bit of money? And she was like, are you kidding me? That was like $5,000 more than we've gotten years before. It was like more money than we're used to. But they have said that they want to come before the council, because it's been a while, and talk about what they do and kind of what they're involved in. And I think it'd be really cool to support that. So anyway.
All right, thank you. And I know we're always working on getting bodies on a regular joint hearings. The one item I did have, we did not have this lady join us, but I am going to send a letter to a lady in Thurston who was one of the folks that went out and picked up that anti-Semitic literature, and just thank her on behalf of on behalf of the community. And just tell her, like, really, it's terrible that this happened, and it's not what we expected, but I really was impressed with how well Thurston responded to it. And there were a lot of people out there essentially just picking it up, trying to get it out of the way, and working with the PD to find out who did it. All right, Joe.
No, I'm ready to roll.
Oh, well, we don't even need a motion. That's why. All right. Next item, please.
Next item is business from the city manager. Item number 1 is the home application, Springfield Apartments, and Aaron Fifield is here for the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight, I'm here with a proposal for the use of federal home funds for a new 39-unit affordable housing development around 16th and Q Street in Springfield. As you may know, Springfield and Eugene receive an annual allocation of federal home funds in order to increase the supply of affordable housing. As a consortium, Eugene and Springfield puts out an annual request for proposals in the fall. This past year, Springfield received 1 proposal for home funds from Cornerstone Community Housing. This is a local affordable housing developer, been in town for over 30 years. They're proposing developing a courtyard housing project with a mix of studio, 1 and 2 bedroom units for households earning less than 60% area median income, aiming to house seniors and those with disabilities. The project 16th and Q is on public transit near a grocery store, and the proposal includes providing resident services to those households, focusing on economic stability, self-sufficiency, and health and wellness. The total development cost for this proposal is about $12 million. Cornerstone is requesting just over $2 million in home funds, about 17% of the total project cost. As part of our process for the RFP, an evaluation committee met in December to discuss this proposal. The Springfield proposal scored high in all 6 categories. That summary is laid out in your packet, with the evaluation committee making a recommendation for funding. So next steps was to bring the proposal to this council, get your feedback on it, and then ultimately the decision will be made at the home consortium governing body to determine whether or not to move forward and award home funds. And I'll note that Darcy Phillips is also here tonight, Executive Director of Cornerstone Community Housing, if there are any specific questions about the proposal.
Are there any questions, Corey?
There's no questions, but I know I've had a lot to say today. We had a lot going on. So I was part of the scoring committee for this, which is why Aaron was pointing at me, and was also have been very invested, as some folks know, in developing that area for it on Q Street and 16th. It's so ideal for this project. It's not necessarily near schools, but it is near amenities that would be great for folks who are older or who have disabilities. And so I am extremely excited. I know that all the funding hasn't all come together, but it is movement in an area that we've been trying to move for a while. So I am very excited about it. So if you all vote it down, I will be very crappy.
Don't get too far ahead of yourself, Joe. Like I'm going to put you on pause. I know you're done for a second. So this conversation started, I think Darcy and I were talking about it today, probably in 2017. You know, like looking at a piece of property that was in public hands, that it was a great development site. And I just want to thank Cornerstone for continuing to stick with this, because this is not the path that we actually thought this was going to take. And I want to note that there is public land that is owned by Team Springfield members in that vicinity that would make a great phase 2. And we should strongly encourage our Springfield Utility Board partners to find a way to release that land so that we can build housing, considering that there's no infrastructure on that piece of land. With that being said, I'm going to unpause Joe. I'm surprised that worked.
I am too. I'd like to make a motion to approve the use of federal home funds for Cornerstone Community Housing proposal for construction of 39 new homes and common area at 1875 16th Street in Springfield.
Second.
All right, Neil, could you call the vote?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Bradley,
Yes.
Counselor Doyle,
Absolutely.
and Counselor McNary.
Yeah.
4 yeses, 1 absolutely, and no nos. The motion passes. Next item, please.
Any other business from the city manager?
Yes, I do. I know it's late and you're all tired and I'm not feeling well either, which is why I'm wearing this mask. But I do want to comment about tonight's business from the audience and the powerful words from Margot Hilpand from the Jewish Federation of Lane County. And I was very moved by what she said. I was very moved by the actions of the Thurston residents who went out and picked up that horrible hate speech. And I just want to thank her for her words and let her know that I stand with her. I stand with our Jewish community. And I want to make it very clear that hate speech and anti-Semitism is not welcome in the city of Springfield, Oregon. Thank you.
Next item, please.
Any business from the city attorney?
No additional business tonight. Thank you.
We are adjourned.